I have this at Ohio's going to be about a 3-point favorite-ish, or sorry, dog. A home dog about 2 or 3, over under about 140. Is that where you line this one up?
That's exactly correct. Now, I do have one question, though, for you. Now, is the MAC now one of your sponsors? Is that why you're doing this?
I'm doing the MAC because I like going into off-the-wall games a little bit. It's not one of my sponsors. I do have a passion for Buffalo for some reason. I think it's because Lance Leopold is coaching their football team. He's from UW-Whitewater originally, won a ton of championships there. I just love seeing the little guy come up, So, I've been watching some MAC games, so I figure I want to get some insight from somebody that handicaps every game every day, such as yourself. I figured you'd be the guy with the knowledge, and I think I'm right.
Yeah, to your point, Ball State, I think they're the favorite, or they will be the favorite. And from a team standpoint, I think that they're going to win this game. Ohio U tends to be too up and down, they're not dependable. I'm not saying we're not talking a lock here, because with Ball State, they're not, the MAC is still the MAC, and I mean, they've been horrible in the NCAA tournament for years. So when they're playing each other, that's different than, when they go out of conference. Mm-hmm. But in this case, I just think that Ball State has the more complete team. I think they have more scoring options as a unit. I think they're going to get the job done. As you said, whether it be 3 to 4, I think it's enough.
Yeah, what's funny is that both these teams were trending really good on KenPom, but in conference play they look a lot worse for some reason.
That's what conference does to you.
Yeah. I mean, I think Ball State had is 109 adjusted efficiency on KenPom, but only in conference it's at 100. It's a pretty big difference there. And I think Ohio still has the same problem. They're both terrible. Now Ohio, they can't shoot the ball well. 311th in offensive efficiency. That's pretty bad being in 300s there when there's only 300.
There's only 40 teams worse than you. That's not a good thing.
No. Both teams are also 2 and 4 straight up in the MAC here, but. Ball State had some injury woes. They lost Hazen and Elamine earlier in December, but I think they're going to start coming out of that. Ohio just lost a few depth guys. The 2 factors that really stick out to me is that Ball State is 6-2 against the spread on the road, while Ohio is 3-6 at home. So great point about Ohio's fluctuations there. It's pretty large, their variance there, and it almost just seems like that Ball State is ready for a win here. This is a revenge spot for Ball State too, because they got blown out by Ohio at home, 70-52, and that was coming off a double overtime game. They played double overtime before against Eastern Michigan. Then they had to play a motivated Ohio team that happened to shoot out of their minds that game. So I like the revenge spot here myself. I just like you said, I don't think it's a lock, and these are forecasted lines, but I like Ball State up to about 3.5 personally. So we'll see what happens when that line comes out.
Yeah, and to that also, I just wanted to add is that if your point about the difference between non-conference play and conference play on the VegasProInsiderDaily.com website, wrote an article recently, Conquering College Basketball Betting Conference Play. So with that, I go through the details, the things that you should look for. There's 4 specific points, and see if those, check them out, see if that makes sense to what the way you like to bet and the way you think. I think you can pick up some extra wins by reading the article.
Fantastic. Great advice to the listeners out there. Check out Vegas Pro Insiders. Check out Doug's article. Probably be a nice, easy read. Learn a ton in just a few minutes right there. Well, let's move into the last game to discuss on Saturday, and it's a big one. You have the Kansas Jayhawks versus the Kentucky Wildcats in Kentucky. Out-of-conference type game. I have Kentucky laying about 5 points here, and the over-under around 142.
I had 4.5. So we're right there. I think the might be slightly higher on the total, but I think you're close on that one. And in this, absolutely love Kentucky here. Mm-hmm. I think Kansas was, started out number one, and they struggled against a lot of teams. They came from behind against a lot of teams to win, and in some cases they covered some of the spreads. And this is when they were 100% healthy. Now, talent-wise, I mean, they have guys, especially freshmen, that are really tremendous players, but they weren't. I don't know. I'm not seeing guys that are walking into the NBA on this team.
Right.
I mean, I just haven't seen it yet. Now, Kentucky, everybody's going to, the focal point is everybody remembers the game against Duke, in which they were. I mean, it was, it looked like, college seniors playing high school seniors.
Right.
The disparity was, you don't run into that many games of high level teams where you see that. But since, to Calipari's credit, stuck with the program, got them to believe, players have grown up, and all of a sudden Kentucky now is a legitimate top 10 team. I'm not sure Kansas, without their big guy, is a legitimate top 10 team, probably overall, but, in terms of actual, I'm going to say, team versus individual talent. And so I really like Kentucky here, minus the points. With no inside presence on offense or defense, Kentucky can control the glass, they can control the paint, and they can defend on the perimeter. I think Kentucky's going to win this one by at least 8 points.
Love it, man, because I think you've been kind of thinking like me here. These teams on paper are not too different from each other. Both teams play great defense. Kentucky's 10th, I believe, on KenPom. Kansas is 11th. But Kentucky does edge out Kansas at 20th in offense on KenPom and 20 to 27th for Kansas. But look at what you just said. Udoka Azubuike. He was Kansas's shot blocker, rebounder, defender down in the paint, swatting balls. This guy was an absolute monster, and you saw him make huge impacts in the NCAA tournament. The only time that you worry is when the guy was in foul trouble, right?
Right, exactly.
With him gone, this changes everything. And I love the fact that Kentucky got blown out by Duke, because that makes a perception that might be favorable to this line when we decide to bet it, And Kansas losing to West Virginia. West Virginia is not the same team they have been. Just their last few games, you can kind of see where they're hurting right there, and they were able to squeeze some stuff out. But Kentucky, since their Duke loss, has ripped through some teams like North Carolina, ripped through Louisville, Auburn, Mississippi State. And Kansas is terrible on the road. They're 1-3 against the spread on the road, losing to Iowa State by 17, Arizona State by 4, and recently West Virginia by 1. They barely beat Baylor, too, on the road. So I have Kentucky winning this game 76 to 68.5. And I think you get this one early. I think this could be an 8 to 10 point blowout as well. And I also lean towards the over, because I did set it at 142. I don't know where that's going to come out as, but maybe I'm wrong at that. Maybe that opening line was wrong. We'll see where that comes out. But hey, Doug, I know you wanted to quick mention a couple teams that you think might have some fading value. We have a couple minutes, so go for it.
Yes, just wrote an article this week about the worst teams to play against teams in NCAA basketball. Number 1, Tennessee Martin, 2-13 against the spread. Now, if you're looking, you wonder where they're at. They're in the Ohio Valley, and they're real easy to find. They're at the bottom of the standings. They're 0-12, 1-11 against as underdogs this year. They got a couple games coming up. Look to fade them. Portland State's another one. 2-11-1 against the spread. Now they're in the Big Sky, and they do have one really nice win. They beat Montana, who's a perennial conference power in the Big Sky, 77-74 as 15.5 point underdogs. They also beat Portland Bible. Now I know, Kiev, that Portland Bible's on your list of play-on teams as the general rule, But in this case, they weren't quite up to the task. They only lost by 83 to Portland State.
Oh, that's a lot. 83. Holy cow.
Portland State, they can't shoot. For example, you'd never take them to a gun range or even to basically inside a basketball court. They're 309th in shooting accuracy and 344th in three-point shooting.
They couldn't hit water throwing a rock out of the boat.
Exactly. So there's another team to look to play against this weekend. And finally, Wyoming. Wyoming used to be a factor in the Mountain West. Not this year. They got one cover. They haven't won a game. Got one cover by a half a point. They're averaging 66.7 points per game. And if Justin James gets hurt, they're in a world of hurt because he averages 20.6 points per game. So he's almost a third of their offense. So Wyoming stinks. Don't be afraid to bet against them at all.
How come Vegas hasn't caught up to setting the correct lines against these guys? What is going on there?
Because they don't have to. Because nobody's looking at these teams. I mean, nobody's saying, you know what, I got to bet Tennessee Martin. Okay, there's maybe some sharp guys, that are paying attention to some of this stuff. But again, in the most part, who's really, you look at Portland State, and Wyoming is at least from a better conference. But, teams from the Big Sky, from the Ohio Valley, most people are going to look towards the better teams, the ones, of the Murray States, the Belmonts, the Austin Peays, Weber State. That's what most bettors are going to look at. They're not going to look at the sad sacks, but that's where the opportunity is. These teams are terrible. You have an opportunity to bet them, and as long as they're going to put out numbers that can be beaten, why wouldn't you take them?
Fantastic, man. Well, that is some great advice. I can't wait to dig into that a little bit, Doug. Well, hey, man, that's about all the time we have today. Thank you so much for coming on, Doug. All you listeners out there, please visit VegasProInsiders.com. Become a member. You're going to be a much better player and better by following some of the advice from one of the best sports bettors out there like Doug.
My pleasure to be on. Everybody, hey, have a great weekend. Let's get ready for the Super Bowl, and hey, let's enjoy it.